In this video, I will show you how to use sine, cosine, and tangent to solve word problems. And really, the only thing about word problems is translating the words into the picture. So let's see, we have a 30-foot long rope that connects the top of a 20-foot tall pole to a stake in the ground. What angle does the rope form with the ground? So one thing we know is that we're going to have a right angle right here because, of course, the pole is going to be straight up and down. There's a 30-foot long rope. So obviously this is the rope right here. So this is going to be 30 feet. And let's see, the pole is 20 feet tall. So that means that this is going to be the 20. What angle does the rope form with the ground? Where here's the rope and here's the ground. So where I just put X just now, that's the angle that they are talking about. So now it's time to solve this triangle and find X like we have 100 times before. So we always begin by identifying the hypotenuse, which is across from the 90-degree angle. So this is the hypotenuse. And then we circle the angle that we are dealing with, and we draw an arrow because that will be the opposite side. The other side is the adjacent side. And then we write Sohcahtoa. Sohcahtoa. All right. This acronym reminds us that sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. The question is, which one do we use for this problem? Well, what are the two things that we are dealing with? Which two sides do we have? Well, 30 is the hypotenuse and 20 is the opposite side. So opposite and hypotenuse, that is this one. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So we will write sine. And then next comes the angle that we circled. So sine x equals opposite over hypotenuse. So 20 over 30. So is this the one where we multiply? Is this the one where we swap? Or is this the one where we do the inverse? When the angle is inside the trig function, this is the one where we inverse. So we will do the inverse sine of 20 over 30, and that will equal x. So second sine does inverse sine, 20 over 30. So x is 41.810. All right, so that was problem number 1. Problem number 2. So let's see. Let's just keep working on the same scenario so we can practice seeing kind of what goes where. So here's our 90-degree angle, 30-foot long rope. So again, that 30 is going to be right here. There's your rope. 20-foot tall pole. So the 20 is here. What angle does the rope form with the pole? So see how this is just slightly different. Here's the rope, but here is the pole. Well, it's hard to see because it's so thick. All right. So the angle that we're talking about now is the one at the top because that's where the rope meets the pole. So the only thing different about this problem is that this time the angle that we're looking for is here. So let's label the sides like we always do. The hypotenuse is across from the 90-degree angle. If you circle the angle that we are trying to find and draw an arrow, that will point at the opposite side. The other side will be the adjacent side. then you can go ahead and write Sohcahtoa. Which one are we going to use? Well, we have two numbers that we're given. We have the 30 and we have the 20. So this is adjacent and hypotenuse. So adjacent and hypotenuse, that is going to be the cosine function. So that lets us know that we will write cosine of the angle that we circled, and that will equal adjacent over hypotenuse. So in this case, that's going to be 20 over 30. Okay, so again, we think, do we multiply, swap, or inverse? And again, the angle is inside the trig function, so this is when we inverse. So we will do inverse cosine of 20 over 30, and that will equal x. So to the calculator, inverse cosine of 20 over 30 . So that's 48.189. Well, we have to round up. So 89 rounds up to 90. So 48.190. Boom. Moving on to number 3. Okay, 45-foot long rope. So this is going to be 45 feet this time. Connects the top of a tower to a stake that is 22 feet away from the base of the tower. All right, so here's the stake right here. Here's the base of the tower. So it's saying that these are 22 feet apart, so this is going to be the 22. Now, what angle does the rope form with the ground? So here's the rope, here's the ground. The angle that we're talking about is the one that is right here. So let's label the sides. The hypotenuse goes first. It is across from the 90-degree angle. We circle the angle that we are looking for. Draw an arrow, that's the opposite side. The other side is the adjacent side. We write Sohcahtoa. Sohcahtoa, spell it right. Which one are we going to use, sine, cosine, or tangent? Well, what are the two sides that we have? We've got the 45 and we've got the 22. That's the adjacent and the hypotenuse. Adjacent and hypotenuse sounds like cosine to me. So we will write cosine. Cosine of the angle we circled is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. So that'll be 22 over 45. Do we multiply, swap, or inverse? This is the third time we've seen this. When the angle is inside the trig function, that is when we inverse. So we will do inverse cosine of 22 over 45 is equal to x. So let's see, inverse cosine 22 over 45. Inverse cosine 22 over 45. Whoa, too many twos. All right, that's 60.732. Kabam! Let's move on to number 4. All right, a rope connects the top of a 10-yard pole. 10-yard pole. All right, so here's the pole. That'll be my 10 yards right there. 90-degree angle, of course. To a stake in the ground. The angle formed by the rope and the ground is 72. Well, of course, here's the rope. Now, here's the ground down here. So the angle that they're talking about must be here on the ground. Well, I put an X there, but they told us that the angle is 72. All right, so things are changing. So this is 72 degrees. How long is the rope? So I'm going to put the X right here because that's what we are supposed to find this time. So where is the hypotenuse? Here's the hypotenuse right here across from the 90 degrees. Next, we circle the angle that we are given and we draw an arrow. That indicates the opposite side. The other side is going to be the adjacent side. Time to write the magic word, Sohcahtoa. Which one are we going to use? Well, looking at the sides, which two sides are we dealing with? Of course, we have the 10, and we are looking for the x. So those are the two sides we're dealing with. Notice that the adjacent side, there's just nothing there. There's no x, there's no number. So that is opposite and hypotenuse. Opposite hypotenuse, that is the sine function. So that's the one we're using. So we will write sine of the angle we circled, which this time we actually have a number there. And sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So that's going to be 10 over x. Now, is this the one where we multiply, swap, or inverse? When the variable is in the denominator like this is when you swap. So the x is going to end up over here, and then we will have 10 over the sine of 72. And this is a calculator type situation. So 10 divided by sine 72. $10.515 because we got to round up. 10.515. Okay. Moving on to number 5. An ant stands 40 yards from the base of a building. So here's the ant, and here's the base of a building. So this 40 yards means that they are 40 yards apart. So that tells me that the 40 goes right here. A building that is 15 yards tall. So here is the building, so it is 15 yards tall. What is the angle of elevation from the ant's position? So the angle where the ant is right here on the ground. So this is the angle of elevation. So there we go. So that's what we're looking for. We'll put an X there. So buildings are straight up and down. So here is the 90-degree angle. That makes this the hypotenuse across from the 90-degree angle. We will circle the angle we are looking for and draw an arrow. That makes this the opposite side. The other side is going to be the adjacent side. Time to write Sohcahtoa. I almost misspelled it. Sohcahtoa. Which one are we going to use? That depends on which two sides we are given. So we're given these two, which is opposite and adjacent. There it is, opposite and adjacent. That sounds like tangent to me. So we will write tangent. So tangent of the angle we circled, even if that is an x, is equal to opposite over adjacent. So that's 15 over 40. Now, do we multiply, swap, or inverse? When the variable is inside the trig function, that is when we inverse. So we will do inverse tangent of 15 over 40, and that should equal x. Inverse tangent of 15 over 40. 20.556. Alrighty then. Moving on to number 6. All right, an ant stands 10 meters from a building. Okay, so the distance between the ant and the building is this right here. And so that's going to be 10. And must tilt his head upward by 28 degrees. So he's looking up at an angle of 28 degrees. We're talking about the perspective of the ant to see the top of the building. How tall is the building? Well, the building is over here, so that must be the x that we are looking for. So where's the hypotenuse? The hypotenuse is right here across from the 90-degree angle. Now circle the angle that we are given, draw an arrow. That will be the opposite side. The other side is the adjacent side. Write Sohcahtoa. Which one will we use? Well, that depends on which sides we are given. So we have the 10, and we are looking for the x. So those are the two sides that we are talking about. That is opposite and adjacent. I see the O and the A right here. So we're going to use tangent this time. So we write tangent of the angle that we circled, and that will be opposite over adjacent. So x over 10. So do we multiply, swap, or inverse? When the variable is in the numerator, like this is when we multiply. So what I mean by that is we multiply by the denominator. So we're going to multiply both sides by 10, like this. That way these 10s will cancel each other out. And that leaves x by itself. So we can just put 10 tangent 28 in the calculator. So 10 tangent 28. So that is 5.317. Kabam. That's how tall the building is. Let's move on to problem number 7. An ant must tilt his head upward by 42 degrees to see the top of a 50-foot tall building. So here's the ant, and he's looking upward at an angle of 42 degrees. So the angle of elevation, sometimes they call it. 50-foot tall building. So the 50 goes here, that's the building. How far from the base of the building is the ant? Well, here's the ant, and here's the base of the building. So this x represents the distance between them. Here's my 90-degree angle, which means here is my hypotenuse. If I circle the angle that I'm given and draw an arrow, that will indicate the opposite side. The other side is the adjacent side. I'm going to write Sohcahtoa, and then think about which one I'm going to use. I'm looking at the sides, and I see that I'm given this 50, and I'm looking for this x. That is opposite and adjacent. So here's the O and the A. Here's the opposite and adjacent. So I'm going to use the tangent function. So I will write tangent of the angle I circled is equal to opposite over adjacent. So that's going to be 50 over x. To solve this, will I multiply, swap, or inverse? When the variable is in the denominator, that is when you swap. So we're going to have x equals 50 over tangent 42. And this becomes a calculator issue, 50 over tangent 42. 50 over tangent 42. 55.531. Got to round up. 55.531. Okay. Now I'm belatedly remembering that units are important when you're doing word problems. So I'm just going to scroll through real quick and add units to everything. So let's see, 50 feet tall. So this problem number 7 was in feet. So I should put feet right there. All right, problem number 6 was in meters. So I should put meters right there. Okay, x is an angle, so that's going to be degrees. This problem was in yards, so I should put yards. All right, so when you're doing these word problems, units are important. So don't make the mistake that I almost made and leave off the units. So these are feet. So I should have feet here, and these are feet. All right, whenever you have word problems, you really got to have the units. Okay, let's finish this up. A submarine begins to dive. Its path makes a 14-degree angle with the surface. All right, so there's the surface, here's the path. They're telling us that we are dealing with a 14-degree angle. When the submarine is 30 meters below the surface, all right, so that means if I were to drop this line straight down, that would be 30 meters down. Okay, so how far is it from its starting point horizontally? So we always have to be careful when they ask us how far the vehicle or whatever it is has gone. Sometimes they mean directly through the water from the starting point to the sub, but sometimes they mean along the surface or along the ground. So in this case, they were very specific and said horizontally, which means that the x that we're dealing with is up here. All right, so let's label everything the way we always have in the past. The 90-degree angle tells us that the hypotenuse is going to be right here. If we circle the angle that we're given and draw an arrow, that will point to the opposite side. And this x up here is the adjacent side. Okay, Can I make this any clearer? Hold on, my x is getting partially covered by the circle. And I don't like that. Okay, so time to write Sohcahtoa. All right, which one of these are we going to use? That depends on which sides we are given. So, of course, we're given the 30. And the x is what we're looking for, so we have to use that. So we're talking about opposite and adjacent. And I see the O and the A right here, opposite and adjacent, which means we will be doing the tangent function. So we write tangent. So we say tangent of the angle that we circled is equal to opposite over adjacent, 30 over x. Do we multiply, swap, or inverse? When the variable is in the denominator, that is when you swap. So the x is going to go over here, and then we will have 30 over tangent 14. And then this becomes a calculator issue. 30 over tangent 14. 30 over tangent 14. 120.323. And the units, meters. We're talking about meters. So let's definitely include the units for full credit. Okay, it looks like we are down to the last problem on this worksheet. So one more submarine problem. A submarine begins to dive. Its path makes a 14-degree angle with the surface. So here's that 14 degrees just like before. When the submarine is 30 meters below the surface, okay, so that part is the same. Okay, so here's the 30. How far is it from its starting point diagonally? So this time we are finding this diagonal distance, so be careful. So this is the hypotenuse because it is across from the 90-degree angle. If we circle the angle that we are given and draw an arrow, that tells us that this is the opposite side and the other side is the adjacent side. So we write Sohcahtoa. Which one do we use? Well, that depends on which sides we have. So this time we have the 30, and we're looking for the x. Well, that is opposite and hypotenuse. Here's opposite and hypotenuse right here, which means we will use the sine function. So we will write sine. Sine of the angle that we circled, which is 14. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. That is 30 over x. So you ask yourself, will we multiply, swap, or inverse? When the variable is in the denominator, this is when you swap. So I'm going to have the x over here, and the sine 14 will end up down here. And then that is a calculator issue. 30 over sine 14. 124.007. Got to round up. 124.007. And the units, lest we forget, meters. For full credit, be sure to include the units on these word problems.